Jeff, rough day yesterday, even though the weather was great, and it's a lot worse today. The Giants really have to lick their wounds after a very, very ugly 26-7 loss to Arizona.
Yeah, well, we're usually talking about Victory Mondays here today. We're not talking about that, that's for sure. Just an ugly day. Yeah, and Giants just could not put it together, and I'm sure we'll get more into the ins and outs of the game, but listen, I think Giants are still there. They got a chance, and really, I think this team just has to pick up and move on, and I believe they will. They definitely will, because I think the leadership and the coaches will definitely show that they can put this behind them. They'll correct some things and go. That's what you got to do. You got 3 left, and you got a primetime game this weekend to prove to the world that you can come back and recover from that loss, and it was a big one. That was for sure.
3 games left on the schedule for the Giants. They're home against Cleveland. They go to Baltimore. Then they come back for Dallas. They are now 1 full game behind Washington in the NFC East in the race to clinch that 1 playoff spot that the division is going to have in the postseason. Washington, of course, coming off 2 very, 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 very important victories for them as they take care of Pittsburgh. And then yesterday, San Francisco. Briefly, I'm going to give you a couple of things here, Jeff, because it just goes back to football 101. And when you lose these 3 particular things, there's really not much you can do about trying to get out of that game alive. Number 1, Giants lost 3 fumbles. They were -3 in turnover ratio.
Yep.
In the trenches, they allowed 8 sacks and 11 quarterback hits. They had 1 sack and 4 quarterback hits on Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Average starting field position, and this goes to special teams. Giants, their own 18. Arizona, their own 47. Now, again, Football 101 is a very thick book. There's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of core stuff that are the basis, in my opinion, for still everything that can produce winning football. It's probably, I don't have the math in front of me, but it's been probably proven out over the decades and decades and hundreds of years that the NFL has been around, that if you badly lose those 3 categories, you're not going to win the game. And, in fact, you're going to get hammered. And that's really what happened to the Giants yesterday.
Time of possession in there, too. I mean, you look at that. You only run 40-something plays and only have the ball for 22 minutes. I mean, that goes to show you a little bit about all the 3 things that you just said. My take on this game real quickly, if you will, a couple different things, hitting all 3 phases. I thought the offense, as we know, with man coverage versus zone coverage, this offense has a tough time for one reason. First of all, when you don't have an offensive line that can hold up with protection against a defense like the Cardinals did yesterday, Giants receivers have a very difficult time on man-on-man coverage and getting off of their routes. They just can't get enough. And so if you don't have the time, the Giants went in last 2 weeks ago and made adjustments in their running game that proved beneficial. I didn't see very many 13 personnel yesterday. They went away from that. Defensively, and really Giants offensively just couldn't get anything going because they just, of those, in my opinion, a lot of those 2 things there. Defensively, I'll tell you, they just ran out of gas. These guys were worn out. But the whole game plan, Paul, was let's try to keep Kyler Murray in the pocket, but sending only 3 and 4 guys with everybody else out and deployed in coverage gave him plenty of time, and hence the stat that you just said, only how many, 4 pressures and 1 sack, had all the time in the world to throw the football. And then on special teams, just continue to break down in their coverage, especially their punt coverage teams. I mean, where is the directional kicking coming from? That kind of has gone away. I don't know what's going on there, if it's purposely done or Riley is just missing the mark. So, and one other thing I have a hard time understanding, and maybe somebody can explain to me, and maybe there's a reason for it, but I was just always told that when the ball is inside the 10-yard line, you kind of let it go on a punt return. I don't know what Jabril Peppers is doing catching the ball on the 5-yard line, 4-yard line, things like that. I mean, I think you got a better chance of letting that thing go and hitting. The ball is it's not completely round now. and it goes into the end zone most of the time. So just a lot of different things, and the aggressive pass rush. A team like the Arizona Cardinals, and I'll get done here in a second, they really just said, okay, you know what, we're going to make Daniel Jones stay in the pocket because we know we can't run. He's got a little bit of an injury, and they just pinned their ears back, and they got to him. So I don't know if this team would have won yesterday, Paul, even with 110% healthy Daniel Jones, the way that Arizona Cardinals defense played yesterday. You got to take your hat off to them. They played very, very well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know that the Cardinals could play much better. But it all, truthfully,
they had a lot to play for. They still are in the hunt here, you know?
Oh, you could say that they were a much more desperate team than the Giants were, to be frank with you.
Yeah.
I mean, the Giants are still sitting in a position where, with 3 games to go, again, they tie Washington, they win the tiebreaker, so they're 1 game out with 3 games to go. That's not an awful position to be in.
Nope.
Arizona, they lose yesterday. You could pretty much let the horse out of the barn. They were pretty much cooked. They would have been in much worse shape than the Giants are this morning. So I do understand that they may have had more desperation. I think the biggest question for me as I look at this game, Jeff, I have no idea what in the world has happened to the special teams for the past 3 weeks. I just don't understand that. Well, Joe Judge is a special teams guru. We know what his plan was going into the season. The special teams was terrific. I don't know what the official matrix of special teams stats indicated, but I'd swear to you they must have been top 5 in the league, maybe even higher, up until the last 3 weeks, where everything has just gone wrong for them in terms of whether it's a turnover, whether it's giving up returns on kickoffs, giving up returns on punts, not making good decisions in returning the ball. It's just all gone wrong. Even Gano missed the PAT a week ago, and they had a block punt for a safety a week ago. I can't understand. It's almost like there was a massive earthquake and the entire special teams unit fell into the crevice.
I know.
How does that happen?
Well, I tried to think about this yesterday after the game, and I knew it was going to be a subject that would come up, and I wanted to have a little bit of substance to it because – this is my bread and butter. I've been around it forever and just trying to understand what happens and what goes into this. And all I could come up with was a couple things. Look at and I looked at this morning because I didn't have it last night, Paul, the participation chart of the players. And my theory here, and it's not a good one, but I'm just going to give it to you, and because I don't know if this is the real reason, but I think it does have some substance. When you look at those young linebackers, Coughlin, okay, Cam Brown, and Tay Crowder. And those guys were core special teams guys at the beginning of the year, and they kind of bought their way on, and they played their way onto the roster to play starting football games now. They've been taken off of special teams. I saw the participation. Other than Brown, Coughlin and Crowder played 7% of special teams yesterday. So those guys are really – so I think that has a little bit to do with it, but not everything to do with it. And the younger guys, and it's no excuse at all, but I'm trying to find a reason why some of these things are happening. The block punt against Seattle it happens. It does. And I just think that it was a well-designed play, and it was kind of a mental error on Nate Ebner and Devontae. I don't remember who the other guard was that they missed that block. But that was just a mental error on that, okay? And then the kickoff return, it's just bad blocking. You got to stay on your guys. And it's fundamentals. Special teams comes down to that's your guy. You need to stay on him. This is your responsibility. And if you come off of him, he's going to make the play. And it's just it's a matter of game planning and fundamentals and being, your will to beat your guy in front of you. That's what it is. You and I were texting back and forth the other day. All of kickoff coverage is all about lane discipline. If you get out of your lane, you got to get back in it because everybody has a responsibility. All the way they count from right to left. The 1 is the right, R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, and then the kicker, and then you go L5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Every one of those guys have a responsibility to stay in their lanes, and then once in a while they'll crisscross, but you got to get back into them. And when you don't do that, you create a void in the return, and then the other team can capitalize on it. So those are just some of the things, and they've got to button this up. If they're going to go forward the next 3 weeks and get into the playoffs somehow in some way, this has got to be their bread and butter again. And I think that we thought that they would correct it last week, Paul, because we talked about this for 2 weeks now. But this is 3 weeks now. That's a little bit alarming to me.
Well, maybe they have to make some changes and put some of those guys back on the units.
I would think that you probably are going to see that. I really do. And because we're not there and we don't understand how things happen, but who's punching the buttons over there? Is it Coach Judge saying I can't, I don't want him on special teams because I need him on defense? But I think that, we don't know that, and I'm not saying that that's the case, but these guys have been taking off some of those special teams units, and I think it's made an impact.
All right. The second thing that was alarming, and I don't necessarily
sound the alarm.
I don't know if I necessarily had an answer for this, is that they lost the trenches on both sides in such a horrific way. The offensive line just did not seem to have any answers at all, and that was puzzling to me. Okay, to be honest, that was puzzling because this line has played so well. I mean, 7 straight 100-yard rushing performances by the Giants. That goes by the boards yesterday. Obviously, the 4-game winning streak, too. But the rushing attack, which has been really so solid. And look, I get it. The Cardinals are a better rush defense than some other teams that they've played, okay? But it still boggles my mind at how they were unable to pound the football when necessary. And you're all right. They did get away from a lot of those heavy formations that they had used last week against Seattle. It's still no excuse not to block it up better with the offensive line. And on the flip side, the defensive line, maybe they were just worn out because, again, the Cardinals had like 37 minutes time of possession. So maybe they were just gassed. But that didn't look like the defensive line I've seen for the last month either.
No. I think they were gassed. I think there was a more indictment on the offensive line than the defensive line because I thought the defense I
agree with that, by the way, because it was only a 13-0 game at halftime.
The
defensive line had done everything they could, including a goal line stand early in the game to try to keep these guys alive.
Yeah. And again, like the field position, I don't care if you were the 84 Bears defense. Your starting position is the 46-yard line, 47, whatever it was. That's tough. I mean, all you got is 15, 20 yards, and you're scoring points.
Yeah.
And so I thought they hung in there pretty well. I thought their secondary did a nice job. Hopkins is, he was going to get his targets. He was going to get his catches. They had to, and they gave Kyler Murray all the time in the world. And to go back to the defense for the Cardinals, Paul, when you think about, we talk about these guys pinning their ears back. Well, I feel like that they could do that yesterday because there was no threat out of Daniel Jones. And even if he was going to run, he's not 100%. And so I feel like that was kind of their game plan. Let's just go. Let's bring some blitzes that we always do. And then, they played a great game, had a perfect game plan. Joe Judge said himself, we got outcoached, we got outplayed. That's basically, those two terms right there means you got your butts kicked. And they know that. And so they correct and move on. Correct and move on.
And then I think the third and other huge headline, but it's kind of like almost not even worth talking about because it was so obvious that Daniel Jones was not right. He just was not right.
How could he be?
It was clear from the very get-go, and the Cardinals saw it.
Yeah.
And they clearly smelled blood in the water. And what do you know about competition? I mean, come on, Jeff.
Yeah.
Anytime the opponent knows that you're not right, they will make sure they do everything to take advantage of that.
And listen, and even if Daniel Jones was 95%, he wasn't 100, right? And the other thing is that we also tend to forget that this is Daniel Jones' second season in the NFL. This isn't a 10-year veteran that has been in, battle tested for time and can show up on Sunday and play without practicing. Not many guys can do that, but especially at that position. So I feel like, the missed opportunities during the week for practice certainly affects Daniel Jones's performance at this level because I feel like he's just so young. He still needs those reps and things. So, and we could talk about it all you want about mental reps until you're physically in there. And game speed and practice speed are so different. So, you just you chalk it up to that. And, and there's so many people that say, oh, well, Colt McCoy, well, look at how he won a game for the Giants last week. Well, he managed a game, certainly did. But you can't tell me that, the Giants would they been better off with Colt McCoy? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, the Arizona Cardinals defense came to play football yesterday. Okay? Remember, the offensive line still stunk. So could you imagine Colt McCoy behind that offensive line? What would he have done? Right?
Well, I think with the other factors that we already put forth, it would have been hard for Johnny Unitas to win a game.
That's right.
Okay?
It really would.
I mean, it was
a bad game. It's a bad game.
There were other areas that were clearly, well below standard. That I don't think even 150% of Daniel Jones would have won the game yesterday. I will only add one other thing, and I want to make this very clear because I know that there's a bunch of people. Well, hey, look, I've seen it on Twitter, and I know people are going to want to call about this. In regards to Daniel Jones, he had his only full practice on Friday, okay? That much we know. So he was limited during the week. Friday, he had his only full practice. It was made clear that the medical staff was going to have to evaluate him. And if they felt that he could protect himself and it was going to be safe for him to be out on the field, that they would give clearance to now the coach and the player discussing it amongst themselves, feeling if he was going to be capable of executing the game plan and giving the Giants an opportunity. Okay? You could say whatever you want. Look, we all saw the game. We all saw that Daniel was not right. But we also don't have nearly the information that the trainers, the coaches, and the players do. So when they evaluate all of the things that are in the soup and they decide this is the way we're going to go because it gives us the best chance to win, you have to believe that they think that is going to give them the best chance to win. They're not going to intentionally either put a guy in harm's way or put a guy out there who they don't believe is going to give them the best chance to succeed. That's just the way it works. Now, did it turn out poorly? Sure it did. Hindsight is always 20/20. The Monday morning quarterback is always right. I get that. So before anybody, especially Charlie, gets on the phone and starts crying from the top of his lungs, oh, never should have played him, shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that, should have pulled him out. I get it. Okay, we can say that as much as we want now. We were not in the locker room with the coaches, with the players, and with the trainers going into the game when they are responsible to make the most prudent decision. They made the decision. It didn't work out. Fine. We know it didn't work out. And that's just the name of that tune.